Nathaniel Cross did not resist. He let himself be pulled across the marble lobby of the building he had built, with his own hands 22 years ago, past the reception desk he had once personally interviewed every hire for, past the elevators that still carried his name etched quietly into a brass plaque nobody bothered to read anymore. His grey janitor's uniform was soaked through with sweat. His badge, the fake one that said Dan Facilities, dangled from his shirt pocket. Behind him, a small crowd of employees had gathered by the coffee station, watching. Someone laughed. A young associate named Tyler Brooks, phone already raised to record, called out, "Bye, old man, maybe get a real job next time." The laughter spread. It rippled through the lobby like something contagious, ugly, satisfying to no one but themselves. Nathaniel said nothing. He simply looked at each of their faces, memorizing them, the way a man memorizes a wound he intends to heal later. The doors closed behind him. Outside, the cold hit his face, and for a moment he just stood on the sidewalk, staring up at the 50-story glass tower with his own name on the building permit filed decades ago. The people laughing had no idea they had just fired the owner of the company. If you've ever wondered what people really do when they think no one important is watching, stick around, because this story is about to answer that question in a way you won't forget. Hit subscribe now, because what happens next is going to make your blood boil before it makes your heart soar. 3 weeks earlier, none of this had happened yet. Nathaniel Cross sat behind a desk worth more than most people's houses, staring at a quarterly report that didn't add up. Crossgate Industries was a $12 billion logistics and manufacturing empire, built from a single garage he'd rented at 24 years old. He still remembered the smell of that garage, oil and cardboard and hope. His
Sir, the
assistant,
quarterly
Elena,
complaint
knocked and
numbers
stepped
are higher
inside.
than we projected. The
"Sir,
board is
the
going to
board
want
wants
an
an explanation
explanation
for the Denver
immediately.
plant's numbers. Profits are up 11%, but employee turnover jumped 40% in 6 months. Something's wrong down there." Nathaniel rubbed his temples. "Get me everything HR has on complaints filed there in the last year." What she brought back an hour later chilled him. Formal complaints, buried, ignored. A pattern of names appearing again and again in every file, always dismissed, always explained away. "I built this company on one rule," Nathaniel said quietly, almost to himself. "Treat people right and the profits follow. Somewhere along the way, somebody forgot that rule, and I don't think they're going to admit it to my face." That night, Nathaniel made a decision that would change everything. He wasn't going to send an auditor, he wasn't going to send lawyers. He was going to see it himself, with his own eyes, as a nobody. "You want to go undercover," his old friend and chief of staff Simon Wade said flatly the next morning, "as a janitor in your own building." "They don't know my face outside of press photos from a decade ago," Nathaniel said. "I've got a beard now, glasses. Nobody looks twice at a man pushing a mop. And if someone recognizes you, then I guess the truth comes out early," Nathaniel said, and for the first time in weeks, something like excitement flickered behind his tired eyes. "Simon, I need to know what my company has become. Not the version people show me in boardrooms. The real one." 2 days later, Nathaniel walked through the employee entrance of Crossgate Industries' Denver plant wearing a grey uniform, carrying a mop bucket, badge reading Dan. No driver, no suit, no name people recognized. The first person he met was a woman named Rosa, mid-50s, sweeping the same hallway he was assigned to. She looked at him and immediately smiled. "First day?" she asked. "Something like that," Nathaniel said. "Well, welcome to the circus," she said, laughing softly. "Just keep your head down and your mouth shut around the supervisors, and you'll survive here. Most of us do." "Survive?" Nathaniel repeated. "That's an interesting choice of word for a workplace." Rosa's smile faded slightly. "You'll understand soon enough." He did understand, faster than he expected. By his second day, Nathaniel watched a floor supervisor named Derek Holt
Halt!
scream at a
I told
19-year-old
you to
worker
get
named
those
Ethan
parts moved
for
an
arriving
hour
4
ago.
minutes late, docking his pay for the entire shift as punishment, while Derek himself strolled in an hour late from what smelled distinctly like a liquid lunch. "You people are replaceable," Derek snapped at Ethan, loud enough for half the floor to hear. "There's 50 guys outside that door who'd kill for this job, remember that." Nathaniel gripped his mop handle so tightly his knuckles went white, but he said nothing. Not yet. He needed to see more. That evening, alone in the small apartment he'd rented under a fake name, Nathaniel wrote in a notebook, Derek Holt, verbal abuse, wage manipulation, witnesses, at least 6 employees on shift. It was only the beginning. Over the following days, the picture grew darker. Nathaniel discovered that Derek's brother-in-law, a man named Nolan Reyes, who barely showed up to work, was somehow the second highest paid employee on the floor, a clear case of nepotism that made no operational sense. He found invoices for equipment maintenance that had never actually happened, money quietly disappearing into an account tied to a shell company registered to the plant's operations director. But amid the corruption, Nathaniel also found light. There was Rosa, who stayed 2 hours late without pay just to help a struggling single mother named Priya finish her shift so she could pick up her kids on time. There was a young engineer named Julian, who quietly reported safety violations no one else dared mention, even though it made him a target. There was an older security guard named Walter, who always greeted Nathaniel, the janitor nobody else noticed, with genuine warmth every single morning. "You're new around here," Walter said one day, sharing half his sandwich with Nathaniel on a break. "Most people don't last long in this place unless they learn to look away from things. Why do you stay?" Nathaniel asked. "Because somebody's got to remember what decent looks like," Walter said simply. "Maybe one day it'll matter." Nathaniel felt something twist in his chest. This man had no idea he was talking to the person who could actually make it matter. If this story is hitting you the way it's hitting me, drop a comment, telling me who you think deserves justice by the end of this, and smash that like button because it only gets more intense from here. The corruption escalated faster than Nathaniel anticipated. He discovered that HR Director Diane Kessler had been quietly burying every single harassment complaint filed against Derek Holt for the past 3 years, more than a dozen in total, each one closed with the same copy-pasted phrase, insufficient evidence to proceed. Worse, Nathaniel learned that the plant's chief operating officer, a man named Vincent Ashford, who reported directly to the board, had personally authorized falsified safety inspection reports to avoid a costly equipment upgrade. An upgrade that could have prevented an accident that injured 3 workers just 8 months earlier. "They lied about the machines," Julian told Nathaniel quietly one night in the break room, voice trembling with barely contained anger. "I told them the guardrails were faulty. I told them in writing. Nobody listened, and then Miguel Torres lost 2 fingers because of it. Nobody even got a warning." Nathaniel felt sick. This was his company. His name was on the building, and people were getting hurt because greed had replaced the values he'd spent his entire life building. He began collecting everything: photographs of falsified documents, recordings of conversations, statements from workers willing to speak once they trusted him. Each new piece of evidence was a nail in the coffin of the people who had betrayed everything Crossgate Industries was supposed to stand for. But corruption has a way of sensing threats, even ones disguised in grey uniforms. Derek Holt began watching Nathaniel more closely. "You ask a lot of questions for a janitor," he said one afternoon, eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Just trying to understand how things work around here." Nathaniel replied evenly. "Maybe you should mind your own business and mop the floor," Derek snapped, "before you find yourself out of a job." It was a threat, and 3 days later, Derek made good on it. Nathaniel had been quietly photographing a set of falsified maintenance logs in the supply closet when Vincent Ashford himself walked in and caught him. "What exactly are you doing?" Vincent demanded, snatching the folder from Nathaniel's hands. "Just cleaning up," Nathaniel said calmly. "Found some paperwork on the floor." Vincent's eyes were cold, calculating. "You're done here. Derek, get HR down here right now." Within the hour, Nathaniel found himself standing in front of Diane Kessler, Derek Holt, and 2 security guards. "We have reason to believe you've been engaging in unauthorized surveillance of confidential company documents," Diane said, reading from a script that felt rehearsed. "Effective immediately, your employment is terminated." "On what grounds?" Nathaniel asked quietly. "Insubordination," Derek said, smirking. "And frankly, we don't need a reason. You're a janitor. There's 100 more where you came from." That was when the security guard grabbed his arm and marched him through the lobby, past Tyler Brooks's laughing phone camera, past the coffee station crowd who found his humiliation entertaining, out into the cold afternoon air where the glass tower loomed above him, bearing a name nobody in that lobby had bothered to truly see. The people laughing had no idea they had just fired the owner of the company. Nathaniel stood on the sidewalk for a long moment, evidence folder clutched against his chest, and then he called Simon Wade. I have everything I need, he said. Set up the meeting. Tomorrow. Mandatory. Full staff. It's time they meet their CEO. The next morning, every employee at the Denver plant received an urgent email. Mandatory all-hands meeting, 9 a.m. No exceptions. Rumors spread through the building like wildfire. Layoffs, some whispered. A merger, others guessed. At exactly 9 o'clock, the plant's chairman, an older man named Harold Pierce, who oversaw daily operations, stepped onto the stage looking uncharacteristically nervous. Thank you all for coming, Harold said, voice tight. Today we have a very important announcement. Please welcome our founder and chief executive officer of Crossgate Industries. The doors at the back of the auditorium opened and Nathaniel Cross walked in, no longer wearing a grey uniform, but the tailored suit the world recognized from magazine covers and financial news broadcasts. The room fell into stunned, absolute silence. Tyler Brooks's face went white. Derek Holt's jaw dropped open. Diane Kessler gripped the armrest of her chair so hard her knuckles turned pale. Somewhere near the back, Rosa gasped, hand flying to her mouth, tears already forming in her eyes. Some of you know me as Dan, the janitor, Nathaniel said, his voice steady and calm as he reached the podium. Most of you never looked at me twice. That was exactly the point. He let the silence stretch, let the weight of it settle over the room like a held breath. 3 weeks ago, I came here undercover because I heard rumors that this company had lost its way. I'm sorry to say those rumors were true, and far worse than I imagined. Nathaniel raised a folder into the air. I have documented evidence of falsified safety inspections that led directly to Miguel Torres losing 2 fingers on this factory floor. I have evidence of wage theft targeting our youngest and most vulnerable employees. I have evidence of harassment complaints buried for years by our own HR department. And I have evidence of nepotism and financial fraud costing this company millions of dollars a year. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Derek Holt shot up from his seat. This is insane, you can't... Sit down, Derek, Nathaniel said, his voice suddenly sharp as steel. You fired a janitor yesterday for asking questions. Today, you're going to answer some of your own. One by one, Nathaniel called them out. Vincent Ashford, Chief Operating Officer, terminated immediately. Evidence forwarded to federal safety regulators for the falsified inspection reports. Diane Kessler, HR Director, terminated. Her buried complaint files now under legal review by an outside firm Nathaniel had already hired. Derek Holt, floor supervisor, terminated on the spot, escorted out by the very same security guards who had walked Nathaniel out the day before, poetic justice settling over the room like a long overdue exhale. As for the rest of you, Nathaniel continued, his tone softening, some of you laughed when I was fired yesterday. I understand. You didn't know. But I want you to remember how that moment felt, and ask yourselves honestly whether you'd have laughed if you'd known who I really was. He turned toward the crowd, searching until he found the faces he'd come to know. Rosa, Julian, Walter, please stand up. Confused, they rose slowly. Rosa, you stayed late without pay to help a co-worker every single week without ever asking for recognition. Julian, you risked your job to report safety violations that could have saved someone's fingers, maybe their life. Walter, you treated a stranger with kindness and respect when you thought it would never matter to anyone but yourself. Nathaniel smiled for the first time that morning. Effective today, Rosa, you're being promoted to floor operations manager with a salary that reflects the leadership you've shown for years. Julian, you're being promoted to head of plant safety compliance, reporting directly to corporate. And Walter, you'll be receiving a bonus and a formal commendation for your integrity. Applause broke out, hesitant at first, then thunderous. A person's true character isn't revealed by how they treat someone important, Nathaniel said, his voice carrying across the silent, packed auditorium. It's revealed by how they treat someone they believe has no power at all. In the months that followed, Crossgate Industries underwent a complete transformation. Nathaniel personally implemented an anonymous reporting system reviewed directly by corporate, bypassing local HR entirely. Employee satisfaction scores rose. Safety incidents dropped to 0. Turnover, once alarmingly high, become one of the lowest in the entire industry. Nathaniel still visits the Denver plant sometimes, unannounced, though never in disguise anymore. He doesn't need to be. He built a company where he doesn't have to hide to find out the truth because the truth is finally allowed to speak for itself. If this story moved you even a little, make sure you're subscribed so you never miss the next one. Drop a comment below telling me which character you'd want to be in this story, and smash that like button before you go, because stories like this deserve to be shared with people who still believe justice is worth telling stories about.